he said. He's awesome.
Oh man, such a tease. I hate it when that happens.
So close, but yet so far. The fight continues. These fish were not giving up as they came up to the boat this night. They were fighting really hard. This is off our 2-day private charter that we just had, and this was our last night of the trip. And we got into some fun fishing on some good grade tuna.
Nice. It seems like the weather was pretty calm as well. What was the recommended tackle?
So from what our passengers told us, the rip roller seemed to be the hot ticket during this trip. I don't know if that's just because a bunch of guys were using it or if it really was, but the guys using the rip roller saw a lot of success during this trip.
And I'd assume that they could get away with maybe 300 grams in this sort of conditions?
Yeah, I think so. I think anywhere from 3 to 5 was getting bit just fine with these bigger fish. And as you can see, the beautiful weather, so the boat wasn't drifting too fast. In the beginning of the night, we had a lot more current and the boat was drifting faster, but as the night went on, it slowed down a little bit and guys were able to get down deep pretty easily.
Yeah, that's always good to remember. That's why you bring a selection, just because you never know sort of what the conditions are going to be and how they're going to change throughout the trip.
Absolutely. Now you can see this angler right here up on the bow. He's using his legs to lift this fish. He's kind of doing the sumo squat technique using that rail rod. And every time he squats down, he's lifting up the tip of the rod, so he's keeping good pressure on this fish to get it up towards the surface.
Yeah, he's doing a really efficient job. It seems like he's killing this fish pretty quick.
Yeah, for sure. Guys that have that rail rod technique down, they get the fish up a lot easier. They get in less tangles because there's less time in the water. There's less heartbreak. So if you're able to use your legs and stuff like that, you'll get the fish in. You can see the angler, he lifted his rod in free spool and pointed the tip to get it away from the gaffs also.
Yeah, so I heard that you had a broken rod because of that earlier in the trip.
Yeah, I wasn't able to get it on video because I was actually gaffing it. Josh and I gaffed a fish, 100-plus pounder, and it did not like it. It took off and it spun the gaffs, and the rod was actually between the two gaffs, and it snapped it. So if you guys have 2 gaffs in a fish, you're going to need to go free spool and point your tip up so that that doesn't happen to you.
You can see another fish here at the surface and taking a dive there, swimming back out. And, you know, I know it's difficult because you are expecting the fish to come back up, but as much as you can, try to put pressure on the fish to turn it around or slow it down versus having zero bend in your rod.
Yeah, a lot of the finishing is teamwork, really. You guys have to have an eye on your fish and work with the deckhand to present him a good shot. You need to lift and watch that fish and keep its head right at the end. A lot of times guys will relax and give their head back to the fish, and it gets its tail above its head and it takes off swimming down.
Right. It's even, you know, easier if you think about it if you're watching the fish, right? Especially with conditions like this, super clear viz. Like having that focus on turning the head is super important.
Yeah, having your eyes on that fish is very, very important. You can't really work with them otherwise. Now, there are times when you're up on a bow of a boat, you can't see it. So it's just important that the deckhand communicates with you to let you know when to lift, big lift, when to wind, stuff like that. It's all about communication. You can see this is a homemade lure that we've been using that's been getting bit really, really well. It's around 500 grams, and it's very much like the Eddie Bomb. We've got a couple of those on the boat we've been using and loving.
I was going to say, I call it the ladybug. It kind of looks like a ladybug to me with the red and with the dots on it.
Yeah, we haven't come up with a name for it for ourselves, but the guy that made them was calling them Mako bombs. You can see another guy here with, I believe the same lure got bit. This is another boat rod here. I actually had the misfortune of losing a fish for him at gaff earlier in the trip.
Yeah. So what time was the bite really hot?
This was kind of an all-night thing. We never had one stop where we hooked more than like 7-8 fish. Throughout the night, we just kept on getting on schools and sliding the same school multiple times sometimes. And we kept on working at it all the way until the gray light. So from about 10:30 p.m. all the way until about 4:45 a.m. we were hooking fish and catching them during the night.
Wow, I mean, it's so crazy how sometimes it can be like that, and then sometimes the fish really start to bite at specifically 2:30 a.m., right? It's just so crazy how, you know, you can't really determine their patterns.
For sure, these fish, when they want to bite, they want to bite, and that's why, you know, if you're on a trip like this and you really want to catch a fish at night, you got to take your naps during the day or sleep lightly or have a friend you're with and one of you guys stays up to make sure to wake up the other one. This group in particular, They were ready for the night bite. We had a plan that we were gonna set aside time for it. We made a big move to get to this area. They all got rests in, and they were all committed to fishing hard all night long.
Well, it definitely seems like they were rewarded for it. I mean, another pretty sizable fish here coming over the rail right now.
Yeah, you can see beautiful grade of fish. I'm not sure. I think that's a West Coast Jiggers, Katy Perry right there that you can see.
And here's our intro shot. Alex fighting this fish and having it take another dive right at gaff.
Yeah, the fight's not over. It keeps on going. This one in particular, I think, was one of our nicer fish. The biggest fish we caught on this trip was somewhere around like 165 pounds. So no cows, not yet on this trip, but some really good grade.
And Alex does an awesome job here. The fish definitely like dives under the boat. Alex is a tall guy. He's really able to lean over the rail and keep control of the fish and really get it back out. But definitely take notes here. I mean, he does an excellent job.
Yeah, what happened is that fish saw the boat, saw the gaffs, got pissed off and took off, right? And it darted under the boat. And you'll hear it if you're ever on our boat, tip down, tip in the water. If the fish is under the boat, you need to get that rod tip as low as you can to lift out. Alex kind of makes it harder on himself because he likes to use his jigging rod, which is acid wrapped and shorter. So it's a lot harder to get that tip in the water and pull the fish out versus your conventional rail rod.
And, you know, when the fish is up higher like this, you're able to get it back out from underneath the boat. Sometimes you're going to have to go all the way around the boat if it's really chafing or, you know, there's a risk that your line could get cut off from underneath the boat.
That's something that like kind of comes with experience, and hopefully the bite's not too wide open where you can have a deckhand with you telling you what to do and where to go. It's just important that you keep your ears open, right? Because a lot of times when guys have a fish on, they get tunnel vision and they stop hearing everything around them, and they kind of forget everything else. So communication is always key on these trips. You can see Alex is helping this passenger down the rail right now. That fish was taken off, and you know, if you don't think you can move or hold 40 pounds of drag down the rail, hand it to him and he'll hand it back to you or whatever. And we're just trying to get this fish in as a team.
Yeah, that's always something important to remember, right? The deckhands are never yelling at you because they don't like you. They really want to help you land your fish.
You can see Keegan nailed this fish in the head, and it was a little bit too big for him to lift by himself. But I think we had enough fish going that all the deckhands were with at least one fish or trying to gaff another fish at the same time.
And you can see here Keegan's really trying to help him with keeping the rod out and helping him with his technique. You always want to make sure that the rod is obviously staying bent and you're basically recapturing that action on the fish as the rod sort of comes up and has that curve in it.
You can see Joey got the first gaff in that fish there, and he hit it in the belly. We'll do that sometimes when a fish comes up hot, because it flips the fish over and gets its tail out of the water for a second so the second gaff can get in the fish.